I'm Alexandra Zsigmond. I'm going to be moderating this panel. I'm an art director at the New York Times. I curate illustration for the opinion section, and I've had the privilege to work with these three artists here. So I'm very excited to finally get the chance to meet them in person. We've never actually met before, even though we've worked together numerous times. So I guess we can start with introductions. So Joost, you can go first.
Yeah, well, I started my professional career about 42 years ago. And first I studied industrial design and changed to comics because comics was a better way to express myself, and I thought I had ideas, so why not choose comics? I started influenced on one way of the American underground movement because there was a lot of freedom there, the freedom that is normally used in literature but wasn't common in comics. And on the other hand, I wanted to make something beautiful that I remember from my youth and that always inspired me. So it's a combination of traditional children's books, comics, and the freedom of the American underground. But after some time, aside of comics, I made stained glass windows, I even designed buildings, I do stamps for the postage in Holland, I do illustrations, but comics always stayed the mother of all arts for me.
And the next moderator is Marion Fayolle. She has become known recently for her incredibly beautiful wordless, poetic, visual narratives. She recently published a book called In Pieces from No Brow Press, and she also has published 3 other visual books. She went to the School of Decorative Arts in Strasbourg, graduated in 2011, and is also one of the co-founders of the publication Nikteloop. Yeah. And this is Brecht Vandenbroucke.
Yeah, it was a great introduction. Maybe you can also do mine. No, yeah, I'm from Belgium. I live in Antwerp, and I studied illustration in Ghent. And so I really, well, you know, I've been working now for, I think I graduated 6 years ago, and I've just been making work and comics, and I've always been drawing comics since I was a child. So. Yeah.
Cool. So, so all of you have recently, in the past 2 years, had North American editions published of your work. So I wanted to start out by talking about these books that have just been published, and thought we could start with Brecht.
Yes.
So you recently published a book through Drawn and Quarterly called White Cube.
Yeah. Yes, it's my first book. It's a wordless comic, and it's about 2 guys. I call them the aesthetic critics, and they make some kind of a journey through the world of the arts and the exhibitions and museums. And they always have an opinion about everything they see. They respond to the artworks. They do a lot of thumbs up, which is, you know, linked to Facebook. And yeah, they're a bit juvenile.
So yeah, what I love about it is it kind of, it gets into all of our minds, showing us actually what we might want to do in a gallery but never could do. And I'm sort of curious how you come up with your ideas. You know, like for example, this one.
Yeah.
Which is when I see it, this is something now that I feel like I really want to do to this
statue.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's about playing and looking at the world and trying to play, you know, and being a child. When you look at, you know, or this one, for example, it's also, yeah, it's just the way of looking at things. Yeah. I don't know how to, yeah.
Well, I love how here you are making this connection between Impressionism and then, you know, making a comparison with the digital realm now. And kind of showing us how they're similar, perhaps, like this way of painting and now this way of viewing reality through pixels are actually quite similar.
Yeah, and you know, it's a positive thing for me also. So
This one also very irreverent.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm curious about how you came upon this topic and how you became interested in critiquing the art world as you do.
Well, I've done some exhibitions, when I started out, but it was always hard because, there's people saying you're an illustrator or you're a comic artist, so it's kind of hard to get, accepted in that world. And I think that kind of pushed me to make this kind of book also. Yeah, that's actually the reason.
Yeah.
But it started actually, the White Cube first was a zine in black and white. So before I made this comic, because I was drawing, actually I draw with lines when I draw, but I started more and more paintings, and because then I got all these new ideas about painting and the things I could do visually with that. So then I decided to make a book out of it.
So you were publishing these actually online on your blog?
Yeah,
and
then self-publishing, very cheap.
And then
zines.
finally now they've been collected into a book.
Yeah,
That's
well,
very
no,
exciting.
these are all new ones.
Oh, they are?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a completely different thing. It just grew,
I actually didn't know that.
in
Nice.
a different direction.
So this is Marion Fayolle's recent book, published through Nobrow, called In Pieces. And so it's this beautiful kind of meditation on human relations that are told through these silent visual narratives where one sees, almost like in a theatrical way, there are no frames used. You just sort of see these human relations unfold on each page. And I was sort of wondering if you could talk about these images and the book in French, and then we can translate.
Ok. En fait, ce livre, c'était mon projet de diplôme quand j'étais encore à l'école.
It was her graduation project when she still was in school.
Et c'est comme des petites poésies avec. Je pars d'une image et je la fais bouger jusqu'à trouver une chute.
Okay, it's like little poetic narratives, and you just let it bouger.
Move.
Move, yeah. J'ai pas compris là.
Jusqu'à trouver une chute, une
Okay.
résolution.
Yeah, okay, until final ending.
Sur celle d'avant. Là, par exemple, en français, quand une fille drague un garçon, on dit que c'est une allumeuse.
Okay.
Sets on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she
It's an
sets
expression
him
in France.
When a woman is interested in a man.
yeah, she sets
she's-
him on fire.
Yeah.
And as a result, he melts into a pool.
Yes.
And then when he is melted, she can dive in. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
explained what we see.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how your work becomes kind of these visual realizations of metaphors for
Yeah.
human relationships. Really beautiful. And this one.
Quand je travaille, en fait, je fais des listes avec, je me dis un personnage et puis je fais plein de listes de bougies, bulles. Enfin, j'associe le personnage à des objets ou à autre chose pour créer des
So
métamorphoses.
This is right. So when she works, she creates lists.
List of possibilities.
Of possibilities of.
Je sais pas comment on peut dire. Donc là, par exemple, je suis partie de l'idée que si on souffle sur quelqu'un, il peut partir en l'air comme des bulles de savon ou comme les fleurs avec le
Right.
pistil.
Right. So if one blows on someone, they can sort of disappear into the air like balloons or like the petals of a flower. And this one also, which I think is really.
Pour cette histoire, en fait, le personnage crée l'arbre qui va lui permettre de se tuer.
So what we see is
Yeah, it's just what we see.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
it explains itself. Yeah.
It's
Life-
self-explanatory in a way.
I know. I find this one
Yeah.
very affecting because it just shows this progression over time of putting so much effort into something and then actually having it result in death. And I love that about your stories, and that they are very poetic, also very tragic in some way. And then a lot of your stories actually have to do with flight and flying. And I'm kind of wondering why you have come upon that theme, why it interests you. Can you translate maybe? Or interested in
Il y a
flying?
beaucoup des avions dans votre travail. Quel est l'intérêt là dans être dans l'air?
Je sais pas vraiment.
She doesn't know. But yeah, but this is a constant theme in her work, kind of the metaphor of flight.
Oui.
And Joost,
Yes.
so this Is That All There Is was a compilation of your comics, your adult comics, that was published in 2012.
Yeah.
And this was kind of the first American translation of a lot of your work.
Yeah, well,
which
it was
before
translated,
then-
but
Yeah,
always in short portions.
Yes.
So there was a raw magazine, there was in heavy metal, but this was the first compilation, the real book.
right. So it
Yeah.
finally made it more accessible to English-speaking
Yes,
readers,
yes.
which is great. Here's one. So you were very influenced by Hergé.
Yes.
These are some frames from the
Yeah.
book. So they collect
Well-
so many different kinds of comics of yours.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. And in the early times, the style of Hergé was quite clear, the influence of it. Although what happened, I mean, that was probably one of the reasons that it had such an influence on the comics in France. The comics, there were traditional comics, and then it evolved a bit in the style of what we say, the artists that worked for magazines like Pilote. So they also were influenced by the freedom of the new generation of artists. But they would never go back to something older than the 60s. And I thought we have one professional in the house, which is Hergé, and why not learn from the best professional? So in the beginning, you see the influence quite clear, but later on there are so many other things. But the effect in France came because I mixed the freedom of the American underground with the style of drawing of what you should say is a children's comic. So that made some people crazy. That's good.
I was really excited to see this piece, actually. This was a response to Raymond Queneau, right?
Yeah, that's right. I was
Exercises in
invited
Style.
by a literary magazine
Yeah.
to make the 100th chapter of Raymond Queneau's Exercice de Style, which is a very important book. It's a book about a non-story in which there is a man with a hat and there is something going on, but it leads to nothing. But you can tell it in a variety of ways. And Raymond Queneau wrote the story 99 times, all from different point of views and in different styles, etc. And so I thought I should pay this homage to Exercice de Style, Mr.
Yeah.
Raymond Queneau.
Yeah, I didn't know about this. It was very exciting to find that.
Yeah.
And this was kind of how most American readers knew of your work, through Raw magazine in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
This was your famous cover
For Raw #2. And it was funny because this drawing, when I sent it to Art and Françoise, to the magazine, I kept the drawing just black and white and spent it hours and hours and days to make the motif on the left, which is very detailed, and it's designed with zipatone. At the time, it was a low-budget way of making lithographs for printing. So you cut it, little plastic sheets with dots on it, and you glued it on a transparent sheet, and one transparent sheet for the blue, one for the red, and one for the yellow. And then you had the effect of different colors. So that took a long time, and I thought with the image, the content, it's something that people don't expect. Nobody would expect that a comic is made this way, as a sort of a theater workshop where you could stand before your panels and a photograph would shoot the actors before the panels. And I thought I would like to have some more surprises in it, and the surprise in the coloring was we do all the effect on the border and no effect at all in the drawing. And I sent it to Art and Françoise, and they said, it's not possible. I mean, we want color in the drawing. I said, yeah, but I invented all my time in the border frame. I don't have any time anymore to color the drawing. And then Art said, we have one in the house here who can do it for you. And that's Françoise, and she colored the drawing. Also in Zipatone.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a nightmare, but a good result.
A beautiful result. And this is a comic of one of your famous characters, Yopo de Pollo.
Yeah, Yopo de Pollo is a character. As you see the head of Yopo de Pollo, he is composed of a variety of comic elements, and his head is in fact a musical note. So it's the ball of a note is a ball, a black ball, and there is a stick high, and there is a little flag. But I kicked out the stick and put the flag right up his head. And he is a music lover, as you see, but he plays records, but he wants to be a musician. And so I place him sometimes in difficult positions. He never succeeds. It's a loser.
Right.
And the comic that you just showed, there was a song of Albert King that I loved very much. I'll play the blues for you. It's a beautiful song. And as I am a great rhythm and blues amateur, I definitely like to include Yopo in the lyrics of this song.
So this character was actually sort of a way for you to connect with blues.
Oh yes,
as a big
absolutely.
fan, but somebody who wasn't actually a musician.
If there is my musical side, always goes through Yopo de Pollo.
And another character that you used quite often was Anton Makassar.
Yeah, he's a sort of I mean, the characters that you create are often a part of yourself. Now, in your mind, you have your interior dialogue with your different parts of your being. And so there is the loser side, a musical man that is Yopo is living here, and Anton Makassar is living here, and he always knows best, and he's a sort of a professor.
So he's an art critic, or?
Well, he's not really an art critic, but I don't know what he is professionally, but he always knows best. And here we see him in a scene where, in his studio, where he makes paintings. He makes new paintings, and a student comes in and said, I thought of something maybe that's good for an exhibition to continue, and it seemed to be the same idea that he already had on his in his studio here. Yeah.
So I was interested in the characters that you've created and what sides of your personality or interests they bring out. And Brecht, I was just interested in who these two men are and why you've chosen these two pink.
Well, it's it's a bit I was interested just the idea of critic. It's when you have an opinion, you always have someone who has to listen to you. You know, you're always, if you're an opinion, you're expressing it, and you expect that somebody hears it. It's not, for yourself. You can have an opinion, but that's not, that was not the point. But so I thought it would be funny just to have the one who's listening to be the same as the one who's speaking. So that way the opinion is quite invalid. It's not important. And here in this one, especially, so it's based on the painting of Géricault, Narcissus. I tried to play with it because they look identical. So it's like a visual kind of thing. Play with it that ends, they kiss in the end. It's just narcissism.
So these have become two of your most well-known characters because of the comic book, but you also have this whole other series online, Robert Nothing.
Yeah, I'm still working on that. I'm struggling. And
oh, really?
Yeah. It's more open, and I would say it's more. Robert Nothing is a comic character. I'm trying to make a book of. I'm
Yeah.
working on it. But
I was curious whether that would be your next book.
well, he's in it, but I don't know if he's like going to have the main role in it.
Okay.
But
But
but they're more about society, these kind of things.
Yeah, that's what I thought was interesting, is that it seems like this character is your way to kind of create somewhat scathing social critiques.
Yeah.
You know, for example, this one. So you delve into kind of much more serious topics, I think, with this character.
Yeah.
Which I love to see. And so it's very different than your other work. And I'm just curious about, I guess it's interesting that you've created this character as a way to delve into these topics.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's kind of like the outsider, like, and he gets beaten down all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a victim character. So, and it's also nice, of course, when you draw to have that kind of character, because he can be very sadistic and very, in control.
Mm-hmm.
It gives power to the creator.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then this figure also appears
that's
quite
Brickman.
often.
Yeah,
Brickman.
that was something that was I developed that character when I was in school still, and it was for me like just, I think when you make things, you're always influenced by other things, and it's it was a very easy metaphor, but I felt like no, everyone's inspired by something they've seen before, and so that way you build your own kind of world. Because you mix different things, and that was kind of Brickman to me, just to build an own character from. It's very literal, just to have a character that's like built.
He makes an appearance here in the last frame.
Yeah.
I actually have this poster on my wall at home.
Oh, okay.
And, but I also love how you bring in, not only do you have these characters that appear again and again, but you also are constantly referencing pop culture.
Yes.
And characters that all of us know very well.
Yes.
Creating these incredibly lush, like vivid tableau paintings.
Mm-hmm. Well, pop culture is very important for me. It's like my roots in a way. I didn't grow up in a very, my parents are farmers. So there was no books or paintings or all that. Like I had to really find myself. But I started drawing because I saw TV shows and I read, comics of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and that kind of stuff. And that's really what got me excited to make things. So I always, the more you grow up, the more you learn, your world gets bigger. But that's how, for me, it's how it started to draw. Just, that's my roots.
And then Marion, something that's been said about your work is that kind of all these characters become one person. They almost seem to become universal because there's not really a character. They're all just sort of the same age and class and race, and so as a result, all of the people sort of recede, and instead what we're left with is just a larger, kind of more general narrative about human emotion. So I guess I just wanted to ask about. That's very wait. You don't have to translate. Don't translate like that. I guess. So I guess ask her through her characters, that are all kind of the same, look the same. Is she creating something more universal?
Les caractères sont surtout les mêmes. Il y a une raison, c'est comme les filles sont les mêmes âges, les mêmes.
Oui, dans mes histoires ou dans mes dessins, les personnages n'ont jamais de nom ou n'ont jamais de personnalité, c'est juste des corps.
Okay, so they're anonymous, they don't have a name, and yes.
C'est avec les mouvements et le corps qui s'expriment, et pas avec les mots ou avec...
So they express themselves through their body.
J'utilise les personnages comme des silhouettes théoriques.
Okay. She uses the characters as theoretical silhouettes. Yeah.
Ce qui est important, je pense que les gens peuvent penser que eux sont les personnages.
Is it
C'est
important
un
that the people can
personnage
feel they are the
spécifique.
character
So it leaves,
themselves?
it
Leaves it
leaves,
open.
yeah, it leaves open for interpretation of the reader.
Cette image, c'était... je travaillais pour un architecte qui devait transformer une usine de fabrication de bombes.
I was working for an architect who had to design bombs.
No, there was a bomb factory, in fact, and that would be changed into another use.
En un lieu de musique.
Okay, it became a cultural institute with music, etc. So that's why we see the guitars and all throwing like bombs into it. Yeah.
So sorry.
And then this one. I love this one metaphorically.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
was sort of wondering what your idea was with this.
En fait, c'est une des images qui est dans In Pieces.
This is one of the images in Pieces, her new book.
Et en fait, dans ce livre-là, je pars jamais vraiment du sens, mais plus de jeu, de transformation. Du coup, là, j'avais envie de faire des têtes qui sont comme des montgolfières et qui permettent de s'élever. Et quand j'ai fait cette image, beaucoup de gens ont rigolé parce que j'ai mis le feu dans les montgolfières. Je pensais que c'est comme ça que les montgolfières volaient.
So she put the fire within the
Yes,
basket.
I know.
Right.
Everybody probably know who is montgolfier, the first of the balloons that goes up by heating air, and when the air gets lighter by heating, then it goes up. Now what we see here is that you see couples in one basket, and there is some fire between them, which I could understand as there is a relation or a fiery relation going on, then you go up. And if not, if you're alone, you're just wandering around.
So what's interesting is, one can interpret that kind of image in many different ways, which is why I think your work is so strong that, it can become a metaphor for couples versus being single, but also for many other things. And so this was actually an image that you did for the New York Times, and it accompanied an article that was about being successful or self-awareness as a way to be successful.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is that you're able to apply all of your ideas that you create for your own work, but they actually have really interesting and different editorial applications for maybe different themes than you initially had in mind. So that's what's interesting about this. And this was another image that she did for the New York Times. This accompanied an article on wolves and whether wolves actually helped Yellowstone Park by actually killing off the elk and therefore allowing the trees to grow. But what's nice is that it's actually similar to a lot of the images she does herself. This is an image from In Pieces, where she's already experimenting with these figures that are half animal, half human.
Yeah.
So it seems like in your editorial work, you actually are able to, bring the concepts that you already explore, but then you apply them very elegantly to newspaper work.
Donc, dans le travail pour les journaux, tu as fait le même truc, le même sujet, que tu peux l'apporter dans ton travail et dans les deux directions.
Oui.
Oui.
Souvent les projets communiquent, ou aussi dans un carnet, je note plein d'idées que j'ai pas encore dessinées, et quand j'ai
She
quand on
writes
me donne
down
un
many
article.
ideas. Sketchbook, yeah.
Et quand on me donne un article, souvent en regardant dans mon carnet, il y a des choses qui correspondent et qui peuvent illustrer le texte.
So when she gets an assignment, then she can just look in her sketchbooks and see if she already has something that corresponds.
And I can understand also that I don't have sketchbooks, but I do start with doodles, with little things and sort of metaphors, finding metaphors, and without thinking, just starting. And then at a certain moment you say, hey, this is probably useful for something. And you change it a bit and you translate it into what the subject is. And yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
But it's what the three of us all have together. We use realistic elements, but we don't start with realism. We use the realistic elements to construct our own worlds,
Right.
sort of a surrealism.
Yeah, all of you
Yeah.
have a surrealist approach, I think. You know, and so your work applies so well to different topics in psychology. And this was something we did together. This was maybe the only thing we worked on, which was actually a serial, you know, a comic instead of one individual image. And I was just wondering if you maybe enjoyed this more, if the process was different in creating this, as opposed to an individual image. Because this seems like it could have come out of in pieces, you know.
Pour faire une BD comme illustration pour toi?
Non.
No. Same, she's used to doing both, I think.
Souvent, j'ai l'impression que mes bandes dessinées, c'est juste des images qui bougent.
Okay. She has the impression that just her comics are drawings that just move.
Yeah.
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 So Brecht, so we have
Yeah.
also worked a lot together.
Yes.
On editorial assignments. This was
Yeah.
one of the first ones we did, I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
For an article on anxiety and busyness.
The busy trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, what I love is that, you know, you're already so interested in topics around the digital world that, you know, whenever I have an article on those topics, I know that you'll be able
Yes.
to really creatively solve it. Like this, for example, was on
On
hackers.
hackers, yes.
And their ability to kind of evade,
Yeah.
you know, the larger institutional punishment.
This was actually also the one we just saw. I already had like this idea to do something like that. So once again, when you came with the assignment, it was something I think there was not much time to make this, so I already had kind of an idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it came out great. This was on, you know, people only interacting
Yeah.
through.
Through the
Facebook,
digital, and not really talking in real life.
And what's been fun for me is that I see that,
Yes.
you know, oftentimes you take additional sketches that you do, that we do together, and then you turn them into paintings and post them on your blog.
Yeah, it's really like, this is free work, but it was one of the sketches I did for an article for the New York Times, but it's like, I like illustrating because it pushes you into drawing things that I normally would not draw, or just, you know, makes you think about subjects that I would not come up myself.
Yeah, this was another one that
Yeah.
I think we did.
Yeah.
This was a sketch.
This was a sketch. This was not in the New York Times, but I made the sketch for a different thing, and then I just wanted to make the drawing because I thought.
Yeah, I think the topic was violence versus nonviolence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In the U.S., and it didn't quite fit the article, but it was such a brilliant idea, and it was really nice to see that you turned it into something more final.
Yeah.
This was another thing for the New York Times Magazine.
Yes.
This was on mutant mosquitoes.
Yeah. It was about interfering with biology and the effects of that. So at first I came up with something like a domino effect, I remember. Like the first sketches and like just blocks falling. But then I thought, no, it just has to be the mosquito getting bigger and stinging him, you know, in the ass.
And then we did this together. This was for a blog on philosophy. And what was cool about this is that it was a piece on Mozart versus the Beatles, so
Yeah.
high versus low culture, which is something that Brecht is obviously already really interested in. And so it was this great opportunity, and I came to him, I was like, oh, maybe this can actually fit into your White Cube series.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't pick the Beatles because I thought that was too high already. So
Right.
I went with Britney Spears.
So yeah, it's always like
No
exciting
offense,
as a
by the way, to Britney.
yeah, it's exciting as an art director when you can see editorial work fits so well into the work that you already do. And Joost, you have done a lot of editorial work yourself for The New
Yeah.
Yorker,
Yeah.
a lot of beautiful covers.
Yeah, there was a cover in 2007, and it's called Summer Reading. So I thought I'd pay all the attention to the reader. And if the sun is very bright in summertime, you have a lot of shades. And I love summer because there's only shades in summertime. I'm a shade lover. And I thought to do it in just this black and white, this hard summer colors, and then only have the coloring of the little man sitting down and reading the book. So all attention comes through the buildings on this, like a spot on this man. And this effect of non-color, this white non-color, cutting through the black, wouldn't be effectful if it was a bright sky. Then there would be a bright sky behind. It would be judged as to be two levels or something. That wouldn't work. So I thought, if I want to have the sun somewhere, I should use the orange of the sun and just put the border and the name The New Yorker in the sunny color. And it's a very summer cover.
So you've done a few.
I've done a few.
A lot.
Well, I think 4.
4? That's a lot.
5 maybe.
Yeah.
But this one about the first smoke, and people smoke is maybe not good, and then the exhaust of a car and of a bigger car, etc. And finally the world is going down, and if you read a paper, you can go up with your ideas that you read in the paper, and then you're saved. But I don't know for how long. And for this sort of work was also inspired by an English artist that I admire a lot, which is Bateman. And he made comics at the early times without frames, and that's a very good teacher.
I noticed that actually a lot of your editorial work has to do with the subject of books.
Yes.
Do you feel like people are constantly hiring you for this topic, and why is that?
Well, that could be. The more books you make, the more you're asked for books.
I think it's true. I am guilty of this.
You are.
We worked on this together. This was on, whether Kindle would actually lead to the demise of books.
Yeah, but it is very interesting, and the reason I think Brecht told it before is if you're making illustrations, you need to read the article, the full articles, and if you do, you come across so many new things. It's an adventure in life. If you're not able to experience everything, at least you can read everything, and also the subjects that you would never think of to make an illustration with. Now, this subject was close to my heart, and it was about distribution and the future of books. It was an interesting article. So here all books are gone, and there's only an iPhone standing there on one of the shelves, and there's an e-reader. But that's not my vision of future, of course, because as an artist, it's not your personal idea that this is the future. It's just that you give something to the reader, think of the future. So that's something else.
Here's another book-related image.
Yeah, I did that one to the wall. This is another, in fact, it's a bit bigger. There is also a sky with a sun, but this is how we go on vacation. And it was also a subject of a mixture. The subject was a mixture of books and vacation. Now we know we can see on the image who are the happiest people going on vacation.
So, so one thing I see in both Brecht and Marion's work is this interest in the picture frame and how that how artwork and our experience of it and our perception of it actually shapes our perception of reality. So this one feels very iconic to me. It reminds me of this Magritte, very famous Magritte painting.
Yes.
It seems like you've been inspired by other Magritte paintings as well, such as this one.
Yes.
So I just see this as a theme, as looking at artwork and having how we view artwork actually change how we perceive our reality.
Exactly. And I also like drawings and drawings.
Yeah.
Just to have the alienation effect. It just, it plays with your head.
Yeah. And let's see. I see Marion playing with this as well, in terms of a window, and actually, that being something that is a portal to another reality. She's playing with it here as well, sort of a reality that one can unfold.
Yeah.
And let's see. Also here, where, a painting comes to life.
Yeah.
So sort of playing with this idea of the picture plane and kind of penetrating into it, which has been something that I've always really enjoyed about both of their work. And Brecht, you also, this was a piece on people fighting in a locker room about Mondrian and Kandinsky.
Yeah, they were having a discussion. On... I don't remember what exactly the discussion was, but...
yeah, I think they were just arguing about Mondrian versus Kandinsky. And this one, based on the famous Rietveld chair, the Dutch de Schiele designer, who was somebody that you were very influenced by.
Oh yes, Rietveld was a very important artist in Holland. And Holland is a country, it was the first republic, because they fought the Spanish king, and they became independent. It was a republic, so it's a rational sort of things going on there. You see it, the rationality of the Swiss and the Dutch, it's a bit similar in a way. And I think the style movement was a typical Dutch movement with a big theory behind it. And the biggest of them all was probably Theo van Doesburg. That's to say that he was theoretically the best, but also a sort of a narrow-minded, tunnel vision man. But Mondrian was more interesting, I think, and even Rietveld was more interesting because he always constructed little thing, and he wasn't stuck in a certain road. He could take side steps. Yeah.
So this image, this says the future according to Mondrian, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
what is this?
So well, if you go back to his theories, to make all things flat in the paintings, which has a certain consequence for life if you continue it. So what you see here, this blocked type wife, she is starting to change from a normal person into flat surfaces, and probably the next step will be that she'll only be a painting. I don't think Mondrian would have liked that one. And the same goes for Le Corbusier, who is a famous architect, and he did beautiful things, but also he had theories about people, how people should live. And he made enormous buildings, and like machines, he said. And I was wondering how he would feel if he would have to live in one of these buildings. So that's why he's very solitary here on this balcony.
So, I could go on longer, but I wanted to see if anyone had questions for the panelists.
I have a question. You guys all do a lot of smaller stories, and some have been longer. or one page or whatever. But have you ever felt compelled or interested in maybe doing some longer form storytelling, like graphic novel, or just taking a project, making it bigger than just a small little.
Shall I start? I never had the feel of making a graphic novel, maybe of a longer story, and some initial ideas I noted, but each time that something came in that made me curious, I jumped on it, and that kept me from doing a graphic novel. Yeah. So I choose for the adventurous life than to sit behind the drawing table and draw years and years on a graphic novel.
Moi, j'ai fait un autre livre qui est plus long et qui n'existe pas en anglais, qui s'appelle La tendresse des pierres et qui est.
She already made a book which is longer, but it's not translated in English, and the title is
The Tenderness of Stone.
Et je peux le montrer après.
So she has it with her if you're interested to see it. And for myself, I would say yes, I'm interested in doing that. I am actually working on a new book, and it's a story. It's a long story. It's with dialogues also. But the most important is just to have a good story and a reason to make a big book. So yes, I want to do it. I think I have a reason to do it. So.
Any other questions? Yeah.
A lot of the imagery that you guys have produced is intended to encapsulate an idea in a way, or put one forward and bring it to a complete kind of conclusion. Do you feel the need at some points to create imagery that, I know some leaves it open to interpretation, but in a way produces no kind of fable or no complete idea?
Well, if I can speak, like for me, illustration is communication. So you're always working towards, these are all for me examples of communication. But it's something you can play with. The level, how much you communicate, how much do you want to give an audience. So yeah, I also try to play with that in paintings and all that. So for me, I don't know.
To speak for myself, it's that I realize that as an illustrator, you make an image and you give something to the reader, but you don't give. I don't like to give the whole story. I don't want to force the reader in a certain direction. I give him something to think about, and I realize that the reader reconstructs things in their heads, and then it only is a sort of a starting motor of a process, and that's the most beautiful thing you can get. And often the drawing are understood in a different manner, in a variety of manners, but that's all right with me. I don't want to force people in a certain direction. I want to be the starting motor.
Moi, j'utilise vraiment les images pour exprimer une idée. Le plus important, c'est pas la manière dont c'est dessiné, mais que ce soit clair, que ce soit marrant.
Yeah. So the most important thing for her is that it's clear and that she's expressing the idea in her images.
Yeah?
Yeah, you guys are all terrific. The work is really beautiful. Thank you so much. I have a question particularly for Joost. You've been a great hero of mine for a long time. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your use of the isometric and axiometric grids, kind of, the designing on a diagonal and what that's meant to you.
Well, perspective is something that you. It's sort of a language. And you see in old medieval works that they didn't use the same perspective as is now common. And the perspective that is common now is the one with the vanishing points, which is in effect clear that if you're sitting here, I mean, these lines are not parallel all the time. I mean, they tend to go together somewhere there, and they tend to go together somewhere there, and there must be a vanishing point here and there, and there is always the horizon, and the vanishing points are on the horizon. I mean, that's a theory, but it don't work always. If you move your head like this, then you will. Well, the theory is that the vanishing point here, the vanishing point there, the lines that are parallel, at a certain moment, they bow towards each other. I mean, that's an impossible thing. And if you make a complicated design with very high and very low things, at a certain moment you come that an angle of 90 degrees will be less than 90 degrees and nobody will expect it. But so it is a theory with limitations. Now, another theory with limitations is the use of perspective with parallel lines, which is the isometric perspective. And it's an old thing that carpenters used a lot. Because if you make a drawing with parallel lines, which means that the thickness of a piece of wood will not be smaller, will not go smaller to a vanishing point, then you can measure it in front of the drawing, you can measure it at the end of the drawing, and you always has the right measurements, you know how to construct a chair. So what's for me important in a drawing is that an element in front of the story, in front level of the drawing can be important, but it can be something, some little detail further on in the room that's as important as well for the story. So it makes it possible, aside of what you can do with the coloring, but it makes it possible to have important things in the front level and in the back level. And aside of that, there is another little thing which has to do with aging of the eyes. When I was young, I made very small drawings because my eyes could see very sharp. Now at the aging, it's less the case, so I work bigger. Now, I had vanishing points at my early career, which were maybe 50 centimeters from my drawing. It was still on my table. But if you make a bigger drawing, the vanishing points are one in this street and one in that street, which is almost impossible. So, and I construct my drawings because it's a sort of a code that I have in common with the viewers of my work, and well, that's something that helps me to choose for this technical. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, one more question. Yes?
I just want to know how you're able to manage your personal and professional time. Like when you're doing a project, how are you able to juggle other things going on in your life? Like, do you schedule time that you're going to work? You know what I mean? Like, do you have a set time of the day when you're going to work and then do other things like meet friends or walking?
Can I respond? It's difficult, but yeah, it's a routine and discipline, I would say. It's just, yeah, get up. For me, it's like get up at 8:30, and I start drawing at 9 in the morning, and I just don't stop until 8 o'clock in the evening, I think. I used to draw a lot longer into the night, but I've stopped doing that because it's not very healthy. But yeah, it's a routine and discipline, I think, and also wanting to do it.
Moi, je travaille tout le temps. Enfin, je réfléchis tout le temps.
She works always.
Mais en fait, je fais des commandes pour gagner de l'argent et après, je fais des livres. Et je dois organiser mon temps entre les deux.
So she first does the commissioned work and then working on the books.
J'essaie de garder le plus de temps possible pour faire des livres, mais c'est pas toujours facile.
Et vous avez des temps réservés pour la vie privée, il y a encore un peu de vie autour des dessins.
Oui.
Oui, ok. Très bien.
Mais Il n'y a pas des vrais...
So she has a life
Il n'y a
next
pas
to
des
drawing.
vrais moments.
Okay,
proud.
so
Ça reste complètement gratuit.
so there is. It all depends on the work that has to be done. Yeah. And to me, I start to work. I'm often in my studio at 9:30, and but in the morning it's emails. There is telephones. There is meetings, and I try to do some work in the afternoon. I don't pick up the phone if necessary, and people have to expect it because it's labor work. You need to spend time behind your sheet of paper. And at night, at about 10 o'clock at night, I'm alive again after dinner, and I start to. I take work with me. I take work with me at home. I have my studio across the street, and I take work with me at home. And I sit at the table in a room where my wife is working on a computer, my daughter is looking television, etc., etc. Everybody around it, and I do my job. And when they go to bed, I continue my works up to about 2 o'clock in the morning. And there is no telephone at night, so that's a perfect way of work.
Thank you so much, everyone. This will be